it's hard to follow on the steps of President Macron. It's much better to speak before than speaking after. And to get your attention, there is nobody best than Ginni Rometty, who will be now speaking to you. Ginni doesn't need any introduction. She is a fantastic lady, the first woman to lead IBM, and one of the most influential people in the world. Ginni has transformed IBM. She has taken IBM to the cloud. She has developed a lot of new technologies, and I have seen a few minutes ago what the quantum computer is all about. And without further ado, I am asking you to make a very warm welcome to Ginni Rometty.
Here? Okay. Am I going to start? Can you hear me? Can the back hear? Yes, okay, you're waving. All right. Well, if you ever wanted to know what it feels like to be the backup band to the Rolling Stones or something, I think I know what that feels like right now. So, all right. So it's probably a good way for me to begin my talk with you this afternoon, I guess, almost now, is to tell you just a little bit about one of my very first meetings with President Macron. Because in one of my very first meetings with the president, I have to tell you it was very clear that he is a believer in artificial intelligence, in technology, and that it will transform, just as he talked about, jobs, industries, and that he desperately and believes that France can be a leader in this area. And I have to tell you, I'll use the word that we are both a kindred spirit on this topic. And kindred meaning we at IBM, we placed a bet because our belief that data and AI, it would absolutely reorder technology and business. And that, for those of you that know us, as Maurice just said, it has sent us on quite a journey of a reinvention of our company, the most ambitious reinvention of our company in all time. And with that, reinventing ourselves all around data and AI, it takes us to this moment. And President Macron, he used a word, revolution. I would tell you that I think that this is a moment of great consequence. It's a moment that actually happens once every 25 years, when there's a technology change, but a business change that are happening at the same time instead of sequentially. And like every great moment in history, there will be great positives and there will be challenges. So in my short time with you this morning, I don't care whether you run a startup, a big company, a developer, a head of a huge conglomerate here, or in fact, the president of a country. I have three things I'd like to leave you with, and it's three things about how the world will be different. And for each one, I want to share a bold action that IBM has taken, and I want to invite you to join us in that action. So an announcement and an action for every one of these. So let me start with my first, it's perhaps the most important framing point of right now in this world. I would call this a moment of exponential impact. And I want to repeat that, a moment of exponential impact. And if I give you some context, not that I have, if you think back in time in some history, so allow me and indulge me one history lesson. If you think back in time in history over the last 60 years, there have only been 2 times when technology allowed businesses to improve on an exponential curve instead of just linear. It was once something called Moore's Law. Some of you would remember that or know it to this day. It was that chips and processing would double every 18 months. That led to the automation of everything as we know it, the back offices of the world. Then there was something called Metcalfe's law. Technically, it says the value of a network is equal to the square of the nodes on the network. What does that mean? That is what gave rise to the platform companies, be it Facebook, be it Google. And I think everyone would say those two moments in time have profoundly changed life as we know it. But I would tell you, and this is to me the most important reason why France is investing in AI, is that we stand at one more time another exponential moment. Here's the formula. Think of all the data in the world, add tools like artificial intelligence, and what companies and businesses and people will be able to do is have exponential learning. And if you have exponential learning, it is the ultimate competitive advantage. You would outlearn other people. Now, I said that was a little bit of a history lesson on Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, and these laws, for those of you that study, they're always named in retrospect. So maybe this one will one day be called Watson's law. It's IBM's name for our artificial intelligence, and it will help people outlearn. So I thought I'd give you some examples just from both business and society. Here, starting in business in France, we see companies beginning to outlearn already. So you have Orange Bank using artificial intelligence and Watson to have and do 50% of their interactions. Woodside Energy in Australia, they've reduced safety incidents by 25% because they can learn from their past and what has happened. But societal impact. I had the pleasure of being recently in India and Africa. In both places, Watson for Agriculture is helping a farmer with a real-time app, with the weather forecast, with, in fact, great amounts of satellite image, his phone as an Internet of Things sensor to, of course, fertilizer, water, improve his crop yield. That is for society. But there's two things, if a business or anyone wants to outlearn, that I'd like to challenge you that are important. Two more things. Think of them as two more ingredients. If you're going to outlearn, it's the kind of data that you use, and it is an ecosystem. So many people here are either from startups, you're developers, companies. An ecosystem puts everyone together. So those two additional ingredients, the variety of the data, which I just want to make a very, I hope, interesting point about data. Only 20% of the world's data is actually searchable. Everyone, businesses, governments, they own the other 80. The best learning, insights, AI, comes when you combine those two things. And then our mission's been to create a trusted ecosystem between developers and companies to put all that work to good. And Maurice, you mentioned earlier, LVMH has formed an ecosystem here, or BNP Paribas, along with Credit Mutuel, startups like Lyft, in helping them to do a way to do mobile payments that are out there. So those types of things make it, whoop, almost, you would have paid attention if I actually knocked this over, I think, right? My heels went right into that, are what makes a difference. So to me, it's clear, and that's why I think you come to VivaTech, that if we combine our efforts between startups, companies, we can have not only an impact on this exponential learning for companies to outlearn and therefore be more competitive, but we can do some things that are really good for society. And so, I said for each one of my points, exponential, a moment of exponential impact by being able to outlearn, I said I'd announce a big action. So one of the things we're announcing today, in fact, President Macron referred to it. It's something called Call for Code. Call for Code. It is an initiative with the Red Cross and the United Nations. We believe it's the largest initiative of its kind that pulls together startups and companies for us all to form and volunteer to perform form teams to compete. And what we're going to do is address some of the world's toughest challenges. And we picked the first one is how to respond to natural disasters. If you weren't aware, last year, 2 times the catastrophic natural disasters than ever in history. 1 billion people were impacted. And so I'm inviting everyone here to make an impact on that. We will invest $30 million. That's for prizes. That is for IBM Cloud, IBM Watson, tools, training. But more important, it is going to be a commitment to you. We're going to pick a set of winners this October, and those winners we will both help be introduced to the venture capital community. But I think the biggest thing we're going to do is IBM's committing to take those solutions, the things that you build, and we will deploy them around the world in all the countries that need those natural disaster response systems. So I am inviting you, and every year we will pick a new social challenge. It's a large amount of money with great organizations, the UN and the Red Cross, to help make a difference. So my first point, exponential impact. Now, I want to pause. It's wonderful to talk about exponential impact, but it will only happen if there is trust in these technologies. And something I've always said to my own teams, society will determine who in the companies that it trusts. Society will determine that. Because on one hand, data is the opportunity of our time, and in the words of President Macron, at the même temps, it is also the challenge of our time. Data will be the challenge of our time. Tomorrow, in Europe, GDPR goes into effect. So some governments have taken action, but this is not something you can only regulate. This is as much about behavior. And this is what companies stand up and do. So the other thing we are announcing while we're here, it's sharing with the world something we live by already. It's called the IBM Principles for Trust and Transparency. And I would like to invite you to look at them and join us in adopting these same principles. These are principles we've lived by decades, lived by them, built things with them, but we thought we could do some good by making them public, and as well being just very clear about what they are in this age of AI. And I want to simply give you 3 of them that I think frame what it means to be trusted. The first one says, all of us building AI or anything to do with it, the purpose of AI is to augment man and machine, not replace. And we can have a large impact on that with what we do. The second thing I think is the most profound, that the data, and not just the data, the application insights that come out of it, the engines of AI, data and its insights belong to the owner. They belong to the creator, the owner of that data. Our business model is not in conflict with yours. We are not taking that from you. And then the third principle is all around that AI should be transparent and explainable. Meaning, who trained this? What data did they use? How do I know that solution? Is this a black box, or can you tell me how you got that answer? And I want to tell you why I am so passionate about AI being explainable, transparent. If you're really going to have an impact on the world, that means you're going to influence really big decisions. And there is no other way than if you're very clear about this. And we learned this by work we've done. We now help doctors treat cancer, 150,000 patients. And it mattered who trained the system. It was trained by the best oncology centers in the world. What data did they use? We used the most important clinical backlogs that have been created. And then it was important to say, but what kind of articles, journals? They had to be the best, most respected in the world for you to trust. Any business, any person who's going to use AI to make any decision of consequence, your child's education, You are going to want to know and have transparency and explainability and trust in this technology. I will tell you there'll be no adoption of AI without that. So it's guided our investments even in things like blockchain, which is why we are so adamant and aggressive about supporting the Linux Foundation and Hyperledger. This is all about being and creating trust out there. So, a moment of exponential impact, if we underpin it with trust. But, my last point, but people, this is also an era where people can really become their best, but it will require that we reinvent, as President Macron said, skills and education. And so if I can make a comment about what do I mean by people being their best with AI, because we're going to talk, I want to talk to you a bit about jobs. When we talk about people being their best, I think you have great examples in this country. Credit Mutuel, 20,000 advisors. They're using Watson Artificial Intelligence every day to answer questions for you, the customer, 60% faster. And 95%, almost 100% of employees would recommend to other employees to use it and do it because it makes them do their job better. Or President Kagame was here from Africa. If you look at countries in Africa or India or China, you'll find one specialist oncologist for 1,600 patients. Those doctors need help to do their job. One for 1,600. We're blessed in developed countries with another ratio, not them. So this will help people do their job better. Okay, so then let's talk about jobs, because there's much written, and I think we have some panels coming up on the impact of AI on jobs. It almost doesn't matter what the predictions are, because I want to be very clear. We believe 100% of jobs are going to change because of these technologies, 100%. And we must be sure that everyone can participate in this world, and that cannot mean that every single person has to have a university or advanced degree to live in this world. For it to be inclusive, we coined a phrase called new collar, new collar. So those of you that know the saying, not a white collar, professional, not a factory, blue collar, new collar. Every job will live at this intersection of both these new technologies and at the intersection of their job. So I told you we had another announcement. So my first announcement was call for code to create something for natural disasters. My second was principles around trust and transparency. This third announcement is an announcement all around jobs and around education. And in fact, you heard President Macron reference this earlier. Given the great demand for AI in this country that we see amongst endless clients we're working with here in production, IBM's going to be hiring 1,800 more people in our centers of excellence all around AI, cloud, and Internet of Things, in Paris and as well as in the regions outside. So I'm very proud about that. Now, I tell you, it's a tribute to the skills that are here. The second thing, though, which is equally to me is important, and I'm going to say I am so passionate about this topic of education. Not everyone can have to have a university degree, and they don't need one to participate in this new world. We're also launching here in this country something called Pathway to Technology Schools. We've launched these on 4 other continents. It is public high schools where we come in and help with curriculum, mentors, internships, and an offer of a job. Public high schools working with something you would call it BTS here in France, or vocational schools. So maybe a high school in 2 more years, and you come out qualified for those jobs. This is, to me, a wonderful way to make everyone participate in this new world. We are over hundreds of thousands of students coming through this pipeline. And if President Kagame, those of you that are here from Africa, I'll come back to how you participate in these kinds of ideas here. So we're launching that here in France, but in Africa, we have something called Digital Nation Africa. DNA. And this is all about bringing, in fact, online curriculum to certify, credential 25 million young and old, does not matter, 25 million African people. Now there's a way you can participate. If it is for our Pathway to Technology schools, you can volunteer to be a mentor, take interns, do hiring. Digital Nation Africa, put your curriculum online and we'll certify the people across the country. Because public-private partnership is the way that this will be solved. Skills will be the #1 issue of our time. Skills will be the #1 issue of our time. So I'm going to wrap up and go visit with Maurice, but let me just sort of summarize the 3 things I wanted to leave you with. I think this is a wonderful moment of exponential impact on business and society. And in fact, trusted ecosystems, Maurice, you've done such a great job creating that, are what can make a difference. And I'd invite you to participate with us on Call for Code with the United Nations and the Red Cross. The second, this is a moment where we can reaffirm and create trust in technology and live by those principles. We're clear about the ones we live by. The IBM Principles for Trust and Transparency. I invite you to join us. And then the third, it is a moment that everyone can make themselves better, but underneath that will be the reinvention of skills and education so that we leave no one behind, no one behind. And I invite you to join us in the public-private partnerships to do that training for new-collar jobs around the world. And I'll end with one quote, as everyone did. As we think about, I thought about this, of all the great scientists that are in France, and I thought as appropriate, I would pick a woman. I picked Marie Curie. And she had a quote that I think is important today as it was 100 years ago. And I am going to, je parle français un peu. So, un peu. Rien dans la vie n'est craindre te doit être compris. Or en anglais, nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. So these are, is that for my English or my French? These are the technologies of our time. It's up to us, though, to develop and use them wisely and have an impact on the world. So I thank you for allowing me to spend this morning with you and kick off VivaTech. And now I'll join Maurice.
I will join me.
Oh, you're coming to me? Okay.
We'll stay here.
All right.
I will join you. Bravo.
Bravo. Thank you.
It's very inspiring. Thank you very much. Ginny, you mentioned your commitment to France.
Yes.
IBM is in France since more than 100 years.
Not me personally, but yeah.
You were not yet born. I was already there.
Yeah, you were
yes,
there, yeah.
I was already there, and I witnessed that they saw IBM coming out of Earth. So, and I must say that the role that IBM has played in France to educate people, to open the door to new technology, to help corporation changing is just tremendous.
Thank you.
So my first question is regarding Big Blue, as we called it in the old days. How difficult it is to transform a company of that size with such a big culture and so many employees in so many different areas. How tough it is. And you did it, so just give us a little bit of the secret sauce of the transformation.
Well, I think for almost everyone in the world is reinventing themselves, whether you're a person, whether you're a company, a country, as we just listened to President Macron. And it's as important to think about what to change as what not to change. So you would not be surprised that I'm incredibly proud of the IBMers who have rebuilt the portfolio of IBM for a completely new world for business. And it's a portfolio all around being the cloud for business, artificial intelligence for business, and then the industry expertise to go pull all that together. And that's what the team has worked so hard on. But I would also say, Maurice, to anyone, think as hard about what does not change about a company. And that, to me, is what allows you to reinvent yourself. If you think about also what does not change. And for us, that has been a passion around, we're here to help change the way the world works. And always remember that it is the trust and the expertise of the IBMer that I think most people count on. And so, both sides, change and what must endure.
Change and what not to change. Yesterday, I was part of the invitation of the President Macron. I saw you, and I saw you working, and I have seen you concentrated in leading. It was tough. I have seen some people concentrated. A CEO of your size, of your responsibility, spending time with all the CEOs around the table about education. This tells a lot about the person you are. And I would like maybe that you share with us one or two of the key ideas. You mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not the university degree which counts, but competences. And I have been struck by this sentence. I was not the only one. Many people yesterday with the Prime Minister have been noticing that sentence. It has been said on TV this morning, reported. So I would like that maybe you elaborate a little bit on what you mean and how do you see this long life education system?
Yes. Well, can I ask are my mics on?
Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask a question of the group? No, okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question of the group? How many people would agree with me that skills will be the #1 issue of our time in front of us? Okay, so I'm speaking to people of the same way. And I'll tell you part of what got us so focused on this. One of the statistics yesterday is that 50% of the education systems in the world are not working. 50%. 50%. Second thing, there's 50 million, according to the McKinsey study, children that never finish secondary education, don't get a diploma. And you need look no further than elections and unrest to see that there's a world that's starting to bifurcate between people that see a great future and people that are concerned they do not see a better future. That is what we have to work on. And so some of the recommendations that Maurice is talking about, we also learned not only is the education system failing, it's not a curriculum that business can employ. They're not teaching what you need. So, competencies. The biggest competency is your ability to learn, actually. It's a propensity to learn. Because whatever specific skill you learn today will likely be outdated in the future. So our recommendations were around align demand from business with the output from the education system. That's a pretty simple, but believe it or not done thing very often. So supply and demand, so that they know, teach what is needed. Another thing that I think is public-private partnership that I just mentioned, that we've been at this for as long as I can remember in IBM, but have really worked on this new collar for over 6 years already. And we are having an impact around the world. And so public-private partnerships was another part of the recommendation. And I want to share just one more. There were more, but one more you might be interested in. The last thing we talked about was actually technology, because there are so many of the skills, the soft skills, the competency skills to teach people that allow them to have lifelong learning that are so much more important. And in fact, a prerequisite is that people are safe and healthy. So if you really work on the 25% of the world that doesn't get this chance, that's what you have to address.
Can you, I'm sorry, we'll take a little bit more time, but I would like that you elaborate a little bit with this concept of new collar. That is great, because you have on the one hand the blue collar, so les OS, les travailleurs, etc., and the white collar, les employés de bureau. And with this idea of new collar, you are going one step further, which is there is only one nation, everyone is equal, everyone can work together. And I love this idea. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, it is about making this, and I think I'm in, again, a country that agrees with me about being very inclusive, making this an inclusive era that no one feels left behind. And so there's a formula that we have found works everywhere in the world. We have gone to the most underperforming schools and said, we'll give you a curriculum, we will give every child a mentor, and in fact, 400 other companies are participating. Employees can be mentors, electronic. Internships, big important part of the formula. Internships, paid, and as well a chance at a job. You will watch a child that does not go to school, completely re-engage, and come back. And this idea of new collar, because it says, hey, and you don't have to go to university. Cybersecurity, I could go on. Look, bank advisors, you teaching them how to learn and live with technology in the basics, and therefore you are making room in well-paying jobs. Our experience has been these jobs become 2x the average median of a country because they can live at this intersection of tech and business. And so that was the idea, to say, don't make it so that only a very small percentage of people can really take the wealth. This has to be spread across everyone, and therefore, and don't put a negative on it, which is one of the things we talked about in France, that is there a negative if you don't have a university degree? We have to make this a positive environment for people, hence the word new collar.
Fantastic. Ginni, Rometty, thank you, Ginni. You are fantastic.
Thanks.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.